Hi, welcome to the No More Sex Shame video series. Today we have Erika Moen with the OhJoy SexToy comic, which is a really wonderful, engaging, and funny as hell sex education comic that, at least to me, is inviting people into a conversation about sexuality in a really non-shaming and accessible way. Erika, thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me, and thank you for the sweet words.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I first found your comic a little while back, I mean, it was, this sounds so trite. It was a breath of fresh air. It was a breath of
Oh,
fresh, sexy, kinky air. It's like the air wafting out of a sex club or something.
hot and sweaty.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, well, thank
But
you.
Why don't you would you share a little bit just about how you ended up kind of doing this really, I think, really remarkable and fun thing?
Okay. Well, I've always been really fascinated and taken by sex. And back in ye olde days, I was really scared and terrified about sex because I had a mom who was very terrifying about sex and very shaming about it. And I was so scared of it. And then as I hit my teenage, early 20 years, I realized through my personal experiences and growth, I came to realize, like, oh my God, sex can be this really incredible thing, this really joyful thing. And so I made this big switch, flip switch, where I really became super fixated and consumed with the concept of sex, and not just like, oh, I gotta fuck all the time, but just like, what is sex? Why do people think the way they do about it? Why are they ashamed of it? Why are some sex things okay and why are some sex things not okay? And it can be kind of arbitrary, and how do people approach it? And I really became consumed thinking about all that, and coming from my personal background of like it being shameful and terrifying, and knowing that there is a facet of it that can be joyful and positive, I wanted to help other people who maybe are coming from a similar background as me to be like, no, sex can be okay. Sex can be a really great thing. You should know about it if this is something that could be good for you. Which is not to say I'm not one of those sex positive people who's like, everybody should be having sex and sex is the answer to everything. Because like, I don't think that. I think if it's I feel like people should pursue what is right for them. And if that means pursuing sexual encounters, good for you. And if that means you're not interested in sex and you don't want to have sexual encounters, that's totally fine too. Anyway, and so the comic came about because in addition to being a huge sex nerd, I am also a huge comic nerd. And I've always been drawing comics forever. I've been doing comics on the internet for 18 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, coming up on 20. And comics are just the way that I know how to communicate with people. And there's such an accessible way to communicate anything, any subject with people, but especially complicated, difficult subjects. Because I think of it as, there was this one time I was walking down the street and there was a guy with a religious pamphlet that's all like, why this politician is corrupt and working with Satan or something. And it was just like a wall of text. And I was like, thanks. And I didn't read it because it was a wall of text. Why would I read your crazy ramblings? But if you take that exact same text and you throw in a bunch of pictures with it, I will read it. And there's this guy who's evil and crazy. His name is Jack Chick. And he is one of those Christians that like thinks Catholicism is not Christianity, who thinks D&D role playing is satanic, like one of those Christians, just batshit, right? And normally people would not care about him. They would totally ignore him, except he's also a cartoonist, and he would take his batshit crazy theories and he would illustrate them in these things called chick tracts. And there are these little comic books that are about that big. And he'd do ones about like, this is why D&D is satanic. And he'd have his illustrations next to it. And he would distribute them around to like at bus stations and at payphones back in the day when we had payphones. And they became this huge collector item because they were so weird and compelling and interesting. And so like people who have no interest in his kind of Christianity, people who are just like, you're nuts, they go out of their way to collect and buy them because they're like, look at this unique object. And so his message and his theories have been exposed to all these people who would never give it a second thought, except that he put it in comics, and comics are compelling and you can't not read a comic. And so my approach to comics is the same way, but rather than shaming and Satanism and condemning people, I want to take comics and use that way of accessing people who would never be exposed to your ideas before and be like, hey, sex positivity, hey, sex education. And so yeah, sorry, was that too rambly?
No, that's awesome. So you're the good Jack chick.
Yeah, I'm like the anti-Jack chick, or I'm trying to be anyway. But yeah, but people who would not agree with my views will still read my comics because they're comics, because they're cute drawings, and I've got silly jokes in there, and it's accessible. And like, I have this theory that in our current society, we are trained to read text if it's by an image. And that's like, it's on billboards, it's on cereal boxes, it's on our newspapers. You just can't help but read text if it's next to a picture. And that's what comics are. And it's such a great way to access the other side and to reach beyond the echo chamber of people who already agree with you. So yeah, that's why I do comics.
Do you hear that from readers? Do you think that the way you're kind of inviting people to kind of consider some of these aspects of sexuality that we're told don't talk about and be ashamed of, do you see the message in your comics kind of sinking in a little bit?
I do. Yeah, I do actually. And from both people who like people who maybe disagree. I've had not that many, but I've had some people be like, wow, you gave me some food for thought there. Or I hadn't thought of it like that. And then I get a lot of people who are just like, I had zero sex education, or I had inadequate sex education, and I used your comics to learn about this stuff in the first place, which is like, holy shit.
Oh,
And
yeah,
oh my God, I've had so many people that have said, oh, I got an IUD, I got an implant birth control because of comics on your site. And it's like, holy shit, you put an object in your body that's gonna live in there for years because of something you read either through a comic I did or a comic that a guest artist did talking about that birth control. Oh my God, like that's whoa.
It's, one of the things I've experienced there, kind of riffing off that, just the like, I would really hope that one day I could get credit for all the good sex and orgasms people have had because of my writing. It's like, you go up to heaven and they say, well, you wouldn't normally qualify, but because of this.
You gave this many people orgasms.
Yeah, without ever even touching them or meeting them.
Yeah, it's like there's secondhand smoke and you've got secondhand orgasms.
That's awesome. Secondhand orgasms. I love it. The other thing, in there is that, the work you and your husband do with this, it's funny. And
thank you. If you like dad jokes.
Yeah. Well, you really hit on a nice kind of recipe here. It's comic, it's visual, like you said, but it's also funny. And in a way, I think that was Jack Chick's trick as well, was that it was, his drawings, and then it was also kooky.
Yeah, he wasn't funny on purpose.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
It was entertaining for sure.
The psychologically interesting thing about funny and humor is that it's often connected to pain, and we use funny as a way to disarm pain that we've experienced or that we might be experiencing. As a psychologist, it's one of the things that we can look at, God help me, it Titans like Robin Williams, one of the funniest men in history, experiencing deep pain.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also the powerful thing about, about OhJoy SexToy, is that you're letting people laugh about something that is also connected to hurt, and that takes off some hurt. I mean, unfortunately, I, as a psychologist and a writer, a lot of times I'm pretty serious. And when I'm pretty serious, it makes it hard for people to talk about some of the pain and acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
Your ability to make these funny, engaging, accessible comics lets people move past that pain.
Thank you. And it is a very intentional choice to include jokes, because something that I have found very off-putting about some such education resources is that they can feel very finger waggy, and it's like they're just lecturing you, and they're kind of scolding you almost for not already being sex positive. And I feel like, because sex is such a scary subject in our society, to make it accessible, I want people to feel like they are in a conversation with me, or with the comics, and that they're part of the conversation, and they're not just like being lectured at, and this is how it should be, but and you don't know how this works. You should be ashamed of yourself and your ignorance and your privilege that has kept you from knowing that knowledge. And what I want to do is be like, hey, buddy, did you hear about this thing? Let's talk about it. And what do friends do? They joke with each other. It makes it a friendly, inviting environment to learn in. And like, if I can make somebody laugh or chuckle, that lowers your defensiveness. That makes you just so much more open to learning about something that's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So it's a very deliberate choice for me. And also, like, I come from a traumatic past. I'm public about this. I do have PTSD from decades ago, and the only way I know how to survive is to make jokes and to find the funny. And yeah, I just like I wouldn't be alive if I couldn't have humor and jokes and finding the ridiculous in terrible situations. I'm like, yeah. I just know sometimes I'll be telling friends about something from my childhood, and I'm telling it like it's this great joke, and they're like, that's really horrifying. I'm like, oh wait, this isn't funny. But yeah, so I just, it's the only way I know how to stay alive and keep going forward. So yeah, anyway.
Erika, that's one of the things I love about doing these interviews, is that with every person that I talk to, I hear something that I hadn't heard before. And, hearing you talk about the way humor and funny helped overcome that sexual shame for you, and is a vehicle for other people to overcome it. That's golden. I mean, other folks haven't said that. I think it's something that we really need to include in the conversation, because you're right. A lot of times when God knows, I'm the king of inappropriate humor, and and then I get shamed for being inappropriately funny. But a lot of times that's about me trying to relieve my own anxiety and relieve the anxiety of other people, so that we can keep talking. And even as I say that, I hadn't realized that's part of what I'm doing there. So thank you. That's really beautiful.
You're welcome.
So how can people find you and your work?
They can go to ohjoysextoy.com, and that's OhJoysextoy.com. And you can look me up. I'm Erika Moen, Erika spelled with a K, Erika Moen, Moen. And yeah, like, you can Google my name or go to erikamoen.com, but mostly go to OhJoy SexToy, because that's the only place I have time and energy to update, really. Oh, and I tweet a lot. So Erika Moen on Twitter too.
So, one last question. Tell me about joy. What does joy mean to you in this work and what you're doing there?
Nobody has ever asked me that before. I don't have a canned answer. Joy is, I don't know how to say it without being like, it's happiness. it's joy. It's the opposite of shame and fear and self-hatred. it's freedom. Um, it's it, yeah, I would say it's freedom um, for your soul. Is that too woo woo?
It's a little woo-woo, but I kind of love it.
Sorry.
Well,
What's joy to
no,
you?
I it, it was one of the things that stood out to me. I mean, joy in the title of your comic about sex.
Celebration. Joy
That's
is celebration.
oh yeah,
Um, yeah, we wanted a title that really said like we're celebrating sex and sexuality and just the world that is associated with sex. And yeah, what says celebration more than joy?
as opposed to treating it as something as a shameful, dirty secret.
Yeah, or just something that like holier than thou about. Because something that you see in sex positive circles sometimes is people being like, I'm so enlightened. And if you don't already know this, then you're just not enlightened yet. And it's like, I know I want to be like, hey guys, this is a cool thing. Let's talk about it together, not as a vehicle to show off how much more I know and how much more extreme I am than the plebeians who haven't done this yet, you know? So yeah, joy. Like we're all in it together. We're all gonna have a good time together. We're all gonna learn something together.
Yeah, we all have these little kids inside us that still like to read comics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Erika, thanks for doing this. OhJoy SexToy. I can't wait to see what comes next for you.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome.